All right, time to get started. I actually had a starting soon screen this time. Anyways, so let's get on with it. This is one of those where I'm talking about a content creator whose work I have enjoyed for something like 30 years. So one of the people who is one of the, um, I guess you could say, true greats of the manga industry. Hey, Jack Harding, how you doing? And I'm a guy who likes TTRPGs, and thus I decided to like the best thing I could do as a sort of like a paid tribute. It's like I've actually talked about his stuff in the past, and but not on this sort of a scale. Like mm, I talked about like the nuts and bolts of certain specific stories he did, not like the more big picture things, because he did quite a lot, and more than most people know he did. Like obviously, he's the person who created Dragon Ball in the first place. Well, he also that's one of several things he created. And you see here this list of manga things he wrote because a lot of the manga things he wrote, he would do just one volume, maybe even only a single issue, and then do something else. And he's been quoted as having said that Dragon Ball was actually something that he'd only planned to do for 1 year and then move on. But it was so popular that he decided that he was going to do some more. And that just kept going for decades. And Dragon Ball is still popular even now after he's dead, which is quite impressive. Oh, and then there's the Dragon Quest franchise, which has also become quite popular. He didn't write Dragon Quest. Yuji Horii did that, at least for the most part. But Toriyama drew the art for many of the Dragon Quest characters. And his art style defined the art style that's used for Dragon Quest. Oh yes, Jack Harding. I love his work with JRPGs. Like this guy here. This is referred to as a cat mage in Dragon Quest. Well, it looks an awful lot like Korin, the cat guy who hangs out in Kami's tower in Dragon Ball Z. He has a sort of art style, and he tends to draw things so that they look similar to each other. I guess is the simplest way of putting it. One of the more amusing jokes was that the hero of, oh, I think it was Dragon Quest 8. Um, oh, this is the one hero of Dragon Quest 9. I need the one from Dragon Quest 8. Thum, thum, thum. Oh, here, click this button. Yeah, this guy. This guy looks a lot like the teen version of Trunks, or not Trunks, but Gohan when he was um, about to marry Videl. It's like that's in some ways it's actually very similar to the costume he wears as Great Saiyan Man, except different colors. And Great Saiyan Man doesn't use a sword. Trunks does that, and the sword, yeah, that's kind of the way Trunks wears his sword too. Again, it's an art style, and he does quite a lot of characters that look different, but you do notice a few things that tend to um, repeat themselves a bit, huh? Ooh, this was a really fun plot point too. One of the things about uh, Dragon Ball that also came up in Dragon Quest a few times is the idea of heroes having a living legacy. Where in Dragon Ball, you have Goku, who starts out as a little kid, grows up into a man, ends up with children. Much later on in life, he ends up with grandchildren. And we are still watching the anime with Goku and his grandkids because people find it extremely entertaining to watch. Ah, boy. Oh yeah, this is a fun thing because notice how these two kind of sort of resemble Goten and Pan. Yeah, there's a reason for that. Oh well. Let's see here. This is, oh yeah, this is another fun thing. Is that in Dragon Quest V, they had this thing where there's a point in the story where the hero gets married. Well, you actually have a choice between Bianca, who is blonde, and this is the version of the hero's son that is Bianca's. Nera, who has blue hair, which anyone who's familiar with his work in Dragon Ball will recognize this as the hair color he used for Chi Chi. But not Chi Chi, Bulma, sorry. Ah. And then we have Deborah, which, yeah, he drew several characters with this color of hair too. Anyway, all three of them are characters that you can, prior to the fork of the story, um, have as party members in your adventures in the game. And if you fulfill certain requirements, you can have them, you choose between the three of them. Okay, you're always going to have at least one of them be a valid choice. So, but you choose one of them, and then the hair color of your children will be different depending on which of them you chose as the mother. It's not a big difference, honestly, because as you see here, the general character design is more or less the same, just different color hair. Oh well, it's a really neat thing that they did in the game. But anyway, going back to the story thing, is that there's a quite a lot of story about this, and well, okay, that's actually a story written by Yuji Horii. At least I'm not entirely sure if Yuji Horii was solely responsible for the story or if part of the ideas were Toriyama's. As noted, um, Toriyama is the one who did the art for the characters, so yeah. I wouldn't actually say that it's an illusion of choice, Bingo Man Zero, because of the fact that while mechanically the different characters play the same regardless of who their mother is, um, there is actually a difference in the game itself depending on who the mother is because of the fact that the one who's the mother is going to be there by your side as soon as you awaken after the time jump when you get frozen in stone. The other two you'll have to find somewhere else. And I don't actually remember if you can have them in your party after this or not. So one of them you'll still have, the other two not so much. And also it's like the actual stage in the story where you have the wedding actually changes depending on who the woman you're marrying is. So one of the things that's a really, really in-depth thing that at first glance you'd think was just fluff. Oh well. Anyway, though, going back to Dragon Ball. One of the things I personally liked was the rather impressive variety of characters he wrote. Be okay, granted, there are certain categories of character that you see repeated several times, like martial artists who are really, really into training. Well, I mean, that's what Dragon Ball is famous for. So you have Goku, who is the guy who you see most, but you also have several other characters who, in some ways, are similar, but they're not Goku, like Trunks, who, depending on which version of the timeline you're looking for, because future Trunks never meets his father as a child because Vegeta was killed by Android 18. Um, Grows up with Gohan knowing that the majority of the people on the earth who actually had the ability to fight the androids were dead because the androids hunted them down and killed them because that's what Jiro had programmed them to do. Gohan, though, for whatever reason, they decide to toy with him instead of killing him outright. And after Trunks becomes old enough and strong enough to be an amusing toy to the androids, they decide they don't need Gohan anymore, so they kill Gohan. Which is one of those things that's an interesting story beat because of the fact that when you look at the history of Trunks background thing that they did for the background story of the future version of Trunks, at first glance, you think that Gohan is actually bravely fighting the androids and actually, almost strong enough to beat them, just hasn't quite managed to pull it off yet. And then when you like really look into it, you realize they weren't trying to kill him. And that Trunks had no idea how powerful the androids really were because of the fact that he'd never seen them actually fight for real. Oh, I really should find a picture of that. I didn't. Oh yeah, this is the regular Trunks, not future Trunks. Oh yeah, there's actually like three different or four different timeline versions of Trunks because of the fact that the future that Cell comes back in time from, the version of Trunks in that timeline was actually said to have been killed by Cell because he had apparently used the deactivation device to let him kill the androids without actually overpowering them with brute force. Use that deactivation remote thingy. Well, the main version of Future Trunks, though, is this guy, who is an ally in the Cell Saga and Future Trunks Saga, and never actually becomes strong enough to defeat Cell. He gives it a try, but doesn't succeed. This is actually an interesting time paradox, though, because the fact that since Cell stole a time machine designed by Bulma and came back in time with it, he actually ended up with two copies of what should have, in theory, been the same time machine in the present that Bulma hadn't designed yet. That was actually a very interesting story beat because of the fact that it clued the heroes into the fact that things were happening that they didn't really understand. Anyway, though. Oh yeah. Also, there's a completely different character named Trunks that's completely unrelated. Uh, Xenotrunks, that's actually just him in the Xenoverse games. But Xenotrunks is based on Future Trunks, not the main one. Anyway, Future Trunk. His backstory with the androids is one that ends rather interestingly because of the fact that after the Cell Saga, he goes back to his world and it's like, okay, I get that you guys are going to want to use me for your daily workouts, but I'm going to kill you now because at this point he's actually strong enough to overpower 17 and 18, even though he got his butt kicked by Cell. Cell was stronger than 17 and 18. So anyway, though, that was one of those things that's an interesting character arc, though, because of the way it interacts with the different characters. Because as a character, Future Trunks is completely different from his past version. Because the regular version of Trunks is, well, a kid who grows up as the son of Bulma and Vegeta. And Vegeta's like, ah, yes, you're my heir, so I'm going to teach you all of my amazing combat powers. And Vegeta takes this very seriously. Well, Trunks doesn't take it quite as seriously as Vegeta does. Trunks does pick up quite a lot of his father's abilities in this timeline. This also means that his combat style is different because in the other timeline, he was trained by Gohan, not Vegeta, because Vegeta was dead. And while Gohan was able to teach him quite a lot of things, didn't have, well, Gohan doesn't know the style of combat Vegeta uses because Gohan has never actually learned from Vegeta. Gohan actually had Piccolo as his trainer at one point, which means that Future Trunks inherited some of the stuff that Piccolo taught to Gohan. Yeah, that's one of those things that's kind of interesting. Now, another aspect of this thing that I personally found to be very interesting is that when you look at the history of Dragon Ball, because of the franchise's popularity and the disparity between the intense popularity of the anime with Toriyama's interest in working on it full time, ended up with a lot of things that weren't actually written by Toriyama, like the entirety of Dragon Ball GT and the Dragon Ball Z movies. I don't After the end of Dragon Ball Z, I don't think any of the stuff that was released between then and Dragon Ball Super was actually directly written by Toriyama. All of Dragon Ball GT was written by others. However, Toriyama did character designs for a lot of things. Not everything, but quite a lot of things. Like Giru, the robot that follows them around for most of GT. Yeah, that was one of Toriyama's designs. And if you look closely at it, you'll notice that while it has many differences, there's also certain similarities to several of Toriyama's other robot designs. Like this thing, you know, not particularly intense similarities, but similarities exist. And then there's Wheelo. Wheelo is much bigger than Giru, but it has that same general shape thing with the head. It's like you have this dome shape with the well, in Wheelo's case, it's a brain, but the other one it's just a red light. Well, Willow also has a red light here, but it's a much smaller one in comparison to the size of his body. And this is one of the things with the world's strongest that was interesting is just the sheer scale of the robotic body that Willow had made for himself. The compact form, I don't think that was in the original movie. I don't remember. Ah, that was Dragon Ball Heroes. They brought him back for Dragon Ball Heroes. Okay, yeah, that tracks. Because Wheeler was actually an interesting character, and also one of Toriyama's ideas, ultimately. Now, Toriyama didn't actually write the world's strongest movie. Who did? I believe that was Takao Koyama. Most of the Dragon Ball Z movies were written by Takao Koyama. Yeah, here it is, Takao Koyama. Takao Koyama is also the person who did the majority of the adaptation of the anime. So, you know, that's as a writer, he was someone who did quite a lot. He didn't like design characters. He had Toriyama do that for him. He would write the stories being told with the characters, and that was something that I think helped Dragon Ball Z's fandom a lot. Is that because of the fact that Toriyama wasn't actually doing literally everything all on his own. There was a lot more for people to enjoy he, than what Toriyama would have been able to create if he did everything personally. Oh well, like the whole thing with Android 13. Again, the basic idea was something Toriyama came up with. It's like in Dragon Ball Z, they allude to the fact that Dr. Gero had created a lot of androids. Like Android 8 was apparently one of Dr. Gero's creations, even though we never actually see Dr. Gero show up in any of the episodes where we see Android 8. Major Metallatron, he might be a Gero creation, but all we really know about him is that he's created by someone working for the Red Ribbon Army. He's not a numbered unit, so maybe it was one of the other scientists using Giroux's research that made him. We don't know. And then there's this thing. But that was actually one of the things that I personally found to be very good as a writing device with the Red Ribbon Army was that the scale of the organization meant that taking out a single member of the Red Ribbon Army wasn't enough to cripple them. You needed to find the lot of them and, play whack a mole until you run out of moles. But yes, like certain aspects of Dragon Ball are very dark because of the fact that you need to give the viewer a reason to want to see the hero succeed. It's like, what is the consequence for failure? What will happen if the hero doesn't succeed in his quest? And, well, in the history of Trunks, the majority of the population of the world is dead because the androids get bored and just wander around trashing cities. They don't even fully level the cities. They just like shoot holes in things, knock buildings over, but don't just pulverize the whole thing into ruin. Why? Because they know that if they actually methodically like properly go around and just erase everything, then they'll have nothing left to play with. He also made a whole bunch of alien characters, like Cooler. And of course, we have Cooler's Crusher Corps, who were a variety of weird aliens who, in some cases are actually very similar to aliens we've seen before, like Solza here. Solza here is very similar to one of the Ginyu Force members and is apparently from the same planet. We don't actually know what the name of the planet is, although his race are referred to as the Branch Sajin, which I guess translates to people from planet Branch, but that's literally the only thing we know about the planet. This guy, who was one of Frieza's Ginyu Force, is from the same planet. Note how they have different skin color and hair color. They do, however, have very similar features other than their coloration. So I guess that's just something that varies in their race. This is actually something you'll see with certain of the races in Toriyama's work is that some of the races that he writes in his work just don't have skin color the same way humans do. Which, hey, you know what? It's an alien race. Go for it, I guess. And that is one of the things that they use as, or what Toriyama used to define some of it. Oh yeah, here, a female member who is pink. Really? Does this? Do these actually have pictures? If you go to the article, okay, that one's orange, and looks very similar to Jace. Mm, hmm, that's a tiny picture. Anyway, though, it's actually one of those things I personally found to be very entertaining because of the fact that a lot of the stuff that he did was kind of sort of running off of the concept of rule of cool. It's like you have a bunch of aliens show up that you want to depict as being rather similar to humans. One of the quickest and easiest ways to do that is give them, you know, different color of skin. So this guy has this orangish red skin. This guy pale blue, and wait, yeah, that's what I thought. We've never seen a picture of Planet Branch. Whoever they are, they work for Frieza and his family. Oh, okay. We do have a few details. It's a binary system. The planet has high gravity, 10 times or more of that of the Earth, and the Brent Sage are thus very physically powerful compared to uh, races with from planets with less gravity. And and yeah, that's really all we know. But this is a race that is seen as the homeworld of minions of bad guys. Let's see here. What's another example of that? Oh, did Toriyama create the Hmm. Well, let's see here. What was that guy's name again? Garlic. Mm, Garlic is a villain in the Dragon Ball Z universe. He's mentioned first in Dead Zone. Okay. Trying to remember what if it was someone who's actually created by Toriyama or not. Hmm. Now, Garlic is the guy who created the Blackwater Mist, which is something that you can use as a mind control tool. But there's a counter agent, and anyone who knows how to do the counter agent is going to, well, undo it. Yeah, they're referred to as the Serpent Race. And this is one of those things I was talking about with a group of aliens that are physically very different from each other, even though they're all the same race from the same planet. Like Garlic Jr. is, until he transforms, rather small. And then you have several of his henchmen who I don't remember all of their names. I would have to look that up. But they look very different from each other. This guy has horns. Well, this one has horns too, just a different shape of horns. Some of them have noses like humans do, some of them don't. Very different colors of skin. This guy has like catfish like tendrils sticking out of his jawline. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be facial hair or not. Maybe it is supposed to be like tufts of facial hair. Oh well. Here we are. These are Ginger, Nikki, and Sancho. These are the ones from the original Dead Zone movie. Spice and Vinegar here are from the Garlic Jr. saga that was a filler arc in Dragon Ball Z. If I remember right, Takao Koyama is the one who wrote that. I'm not sure who actually did the character designs for this, because they do actually have a very strong resemblance to the art style that uh, Toriyama uses, but it could be someone who works for Toei doing a imitation of Toriyama's art style. Yeah, so they're not listed in this article here, as far as I can tell. It's like that's yeah, because yeah. Anyway, though, it is interesting though that whoever did create these was able to make it fit with the way Toriyama wrote stuff. Okay, Spice using his hair to strangle people was actually quite entertaining. That is something that you don't see very often in Dragon Ball, and having someone do that is just yeah. The version of the giant form they use is actually in these two's case they actually only get moderately larger. Garlic Jr. gets huge compared to his normal self and actually completely changes color. These two, eh, they get bulkier. It's mostly just getting more muscular looking than actually bigger. Although you the change is drastic enough that they kind of sort of look like they get like twice as big or something. Well, actually, hold on. Spice, um, it's much more drastic in the case of Spice, I guess. Oh yeah, yeah. Spice is the one using Mamba is a completely different character. Let me see it somewhere else. Oh well, doesn't say in here who's yet one who actually like did the character design work here. In the original version of Dead Zone, the race's name is never brought up. But later on, things talk about that later. Hmm. Okay. Where I'm just really not sure exactly what was supposed to be going on in this scene. It's one of those things where it's like, oh no, wait, what's going on now? I don't know. This is also interesting because this is supposedly an army of Machians showing up to conquer some planet, and a taste of what would happen if these guys actually went properly on a full scale conquest. Now, one thing that's okay, the Makio Seijin thing, I know that got brought up in the anime filler arc in DBZ because Garlic Jr. talks about the Makio Star as being their home and the source of their power. Okay, Dead Zone. Let's see. Let's look in here. Do, do, do. Yeah, the whole thing with this being called Dead Zone was because well, that was an afterthought when they realized that making multiple Dragon Ball Z movies, they needed to have different names for them, so they retroactively named this one Dead Zone. Okay, written by Takao Koyama. That's what I thought. Ah, art director Yuji Ikeda. So he might be the person who oversaw the character creation work for it. Then, oh, this is interesting. Daizenshu 7 actually put this as one of the Dragon Ball movies in the official Dragon Ball timeline. Because despite the fact that Takao Koyama was one of the people who knows the most about the Dragon Ball Z setting, he didn't actually write the movies to take place in a specific point in the anime timeline. He just wrote them as taking place vaguely somewhere alongside the events of the anime, but you can't actually wedge them in to the timeline anywhere. Anyway, really love the whole way that this particular thing played out. I'm genuinely curious exactly what level of work, uh, how much of this is actually Toriyama's, and how much of it was just other people using the setting because it doesn't actually say anything here. Hmm. Hmm. Ah, here you are. Here's some notes. Oh yeah, it's like, this is one of the things that's noteworthy here is that this because of the fact that this was so close in time to when Dragon Ball, the original Dragon Ball, was being made, certain aspects of this would be more like the original Dragon Ball than Dragon Ball Z. And of course, you know, Well, like I mentioned before, it's like there's several things with the Dragon Ball Z movies that none of them is exactly a perfect fit for the anime timeline. Because, well, one of the things is the whole thing of like the reveal of Goku having a son, which this supposedly takes place before Saiyan Saga. So, well, as several people have pointed it out, if you microanalyze any work of fiction, you're going to find flaws in it. It's actually one of the things that's notable about Lord of the Rings is that the version that most people are familiar with is actually an edited version that was edited by the original author and reprinted differently because of the fact that he'd found flaws in his own work and decided to fix them. In the case of Dragon Ball Z, that didn't happen. They write it, they publish it, and then people find flaws in it later, and they're like, ah, well then, oops, and they don't actually retcon it. Yeah, and this is also another thing is that there are several things that happen in here that are kind of like seeding plot ideas. And the whole thing of Gohan getting captured. At no point in the episode does or movie does it explain why Garlic Jr.'s henchmen capture Gohan. They just do. Although Garlic Jr. does later decide that he wants to take on Gohan as an apprentice, that wasn't the reason they captured him. That was something that happened afterwards. And, oh yeah, also, I mentioned the whole like anime filler thing is that they decided that they wanted to stretch out the anime so that they created a story arc in the Dragon Ball Z anime that references this movie because it is something that comes up in the anime as Garlic Jr. coming back because the Makio star comes closer to Earth, and this enables Garlic Jr. to escape from the dead zone. Although, for reasons that no one understands, Garlic Jr. uses his powers to reopen the dead zone so that people can shove him back into it. Oh, and someone blows up the Makio star to cripple him and make it so he can never escape the dead zone ever again. Pity. To be honest, the whole Machian race concept is actually one of those things that I thought was interesting because of the fact that they imply that there's quite a large number of them. Like that army scene where you see um hundreds or thousands of them marching as a group. Um hmm, just how many Machians are there? Because presumably all of these human-like figures are Machians. And those were Garlic's army back when the original Garlic was trying to become the guardian of Earth. And that brings up an interesting question that the anime didn't answer, and that something that you would have to go with if you're doing a TTRPG. It's like if you're writing this in a TTRPG module, it's like a Machian resurgence. Having more Machians show up that look slightly different from the ones we've seen so far in the anime, hey, go for it. that is something that, anything that anime didn't already do is something that the players in a TTRPG could have loads of fun with. And that's honestly the whole thing here is that uh, what Toriyama created with Dragon Ball and Dragon Quest and so many other things is stuff where he's making toys for the view for the audience to enjoy. And enjoying them in some cases means actually playing with them. Like Toriyama is noted to have been a great fan of the Dragon Quest game series. And he was in part the creator because he was the person who designed so many of the characters for those games. So, he was enjoying his own work. Also, okay, we don't know who created the serpent race or the Machians, as they're called. But we do know that the race of Hera was absolutely Toriyama's idea. Although he didn't actually design everything. He came up with the idea of the race of Hera, and whoever in Toei's animation department modified it somewhat. Because notably, the color scheme of the race of Hera is not in because like this is Toriyama Sama's concept art for Zanya. Note how she has deep red orange hair and light greenish skin. Well, the stuff we have here is a darker green and lighter orange hair. And this is also something that's interesting is because it's not clear if this is actually a transformation when she does this while fighting Krillin. It might be, but the anime doesn't tell us. And she doesn't do this later on. So it's kind of a question of what exactly was going on because you would think that she would do this if it's an actual like power up when fighting Gohan later, but she doesn't. It could be a plot thread, or it could be that we don't understand the logic behind how this power up works, and maybe Zanya couldn't use it a second time. So many unknowns. Wait, Zanya versus Zarbon. Oh my. Okay. Oh yeah, that was something in Super Dragon Ball Heroes. Oh, that sounds fun. Oh, well. Yeah, it's like Dragon Ball Legends also worked with the Galaxy Soldiers because they were a very interesting character concept. That again, Toriyama came up with the character concept, even though he didn't write the movie. He created the background stuff for the movie, and then let someone else do the nuts and bolts of the actual movie writing. And one thing that's interesting is that the Galaxy Soldiers, I think only three of them are actually killed by Gohan. Granted, having a bad guy team where most of the bad guys get killed by Gohan personally is pretty heavily reliant on Gohan for the plot. Because Vegeta shows up in this movie and gets his butt kicked by the main bad guy, Bojack. And while Zanya is able to go at it rather evenly with Gohan when Gohan Super Saiyan 1, when Gohan goes Super Saiyan 2, he basically just, you know, curb stomps them. And Well, he doesn't kill Zanya. It's pretty obvious that if she didn't, give up and back down, he was going to. And Bojack, in one of his weird sneak attacks, actually kills Zanya as collateral damage while attempting to kill Gohan. Again, kind of an odd plot choice, but whatever. Oh yeah, that's another interesting thing with Fusion Reborn is that one of the plot devices in Fusion Reborn is this army of villains escaping from hell. Well, one of the things that you find out is that the army of villains didn't get stronger while they were in hell. They just didn't. So they're less of a challenge for the heroes than they were in the first place because the heroes got stronger. They didn't. Well, gotta say though, the Galaxy Soldiers were one of the most interesting bad guy concepts because of the fact that they were said to have been sealed away by the Supreme Kais because they were trying to conquer the universe or something. Yeah, this group of people. Let's see. Oh yeah, they also added stuff to their group later, but hmm. Oh yeah, King Kai's death when Cell exploded during the Cell games is what freed Bojack. So this movie was set somewhere after the Cell games were over, and that time period where Goku was dead. I'm not. I vaguely recall someone mentioning that there was some detail in this movie that made it so that it didn't actually properly fit into the timeline, but that it's something relatively minor. I think it has something to do with Trunks because Trunks is in this movie. This is the only one of the cases where we see future Trunks in a proper World Martial Arts tournament. See, the Cell Games was not a Budokai Tenkaichi uh, tournament. And the plot of the movie here is that there's a Budokai Tenkaichi. And the Galaxy Soldiers crash the party. Now, obviously, they end up losing, but they wreak a lot of havoc while they're trashing the uh, tournament. Oh, right. Oh, never mind. That's right. It wasn't actually a Tenkaichi match. Sorry. It was the Intergalactic World Tournament, which is not quite the same thing as the Tenkaichi Budokai, but I guess run by the same group of people. It's a different arena, though. Anyway, though. Also said that there was supposed to be a group of humans from Earth pretending to be great fighters from alien worlds, and the Galaxy Soldiers come from the distant reaches of the universe to kick the asses of the humans who are supposed to be pretending to be aliens. Yeah, have fun with that one. Oh boy. again, one of Toriyama's more interesting ideas because the fact that it's neatly tied into one of the other ideas. Like the way that the Cell games ended had consequences. And one of those consequences was these guys showing up on Earth to try to take over the planet. And that is very compelling as a plot hook because it's the whole like classic. It's like, ah, yes, you beat that bad guy, but what about this bad guy over here? And again, it's like it wasn't directly Cell's death that caused it. It was the fact that King Kai ended up being collateral damage as part of defeating Cell. If King Kai hadn't been collateral damage when Cell died, then it wouldn't have been an issue. Because, like, what Gohan eventually later did to kill Cell, if he'd done that before Cell went into self destruction mode, would have prevented King Kai from dying, and thus Bojack would have stayed sealed. Yeah, that's a fun thing to ponder. Oh yeah, here's the arena for the Intergalactic World Tournament. I'm not sure if this is in a damaged state or not. That looks weird. But yeah, it's like this massive structure that was built solely for the tournament and meant to be incredibly spectacular. In real life, this would be so insanely expensive, no one would even think about building something like this. Because of the fact that finding people to actually pay for tickets to it that would be able to fund something like this is just ridiculous. Ah, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Also, is that this tournament, because of the fact that the Galaxy Soldiers went around murdering people, was the only tournament where they had people actually die. But not because people were supposed to be killed according to the rules, but because the tournament was being sabotaged, I guess you could say. There was no official winner to my knowledge. Oh, right. Like Mr. Satan got declared winner because of the fact that everyone else was more or less gone. Krillin versus Piccolo. Piccolo decided he doesn't actually want to fight. Future Trunks actually goes at it with Tien in a proper match, and Tien ends up losing. If some rando named Duskoy fights someone named Sky Dragon, who loses, Gohan defeats some rando named Udo. So Piccolo and Tien have been eliminated. Vegeta shows up later, but Vegeta was never actually part of the tournament. Oh, and this is also interesting because the fact that because of the rules of the tournament, Future Trunks fights here without having his sword. So when he has to fight Kogu later, Kogu has a sword and Trunks doesn't. And Trunks does the same thing to Kogu that Android 18 did to Trunks in the Android saga, doing a super armor block so that Kogu's sword shatters when Trunks parries the sword with his bare hand. Yeah, that was fun. Ah, well. Then Vegeta shows up, slugs it out with Bojack for a while, gets KO'd. Then Gohan has to finish off Bojack. Yeah, so I guess this is one of the a few um, examples of a proper tournament that's a real martial arts tournament that wasn't actually the Tenkaichi Budokai. This is a Tenkaichi Dai Budo Taikai, which not exactly the same thing. Now, this is another thing that was I mentioned this earlier, but the whole androids that were created by Jiro before he made Android 17 and 18 thing was quite entertaining because they are actually genuinely models of androids that, while Jiro hadn't marked them finished and thus they weren't actually done when he made 17 and 18, the fact that his computer kept working on them, trying to, iron out the kinks and um, improve them as much as it could, actually gave a reasonable plot device because we don't see them until Android 17 and 18 have been fought in the Cell games. Well, see, again, that this kind of goes with that thing I was mentioning earlier about how they don't actually have in the anime a proper way to match this into the timeline of the anime. It doesn't quite fit perfectly. Mm, but yes, like Jiro had put them into storage and let one of his computers tinker with them because they just weren't ready when he had worked on them originally, and they were nearly ready, but weren't able to get the job done. I guess you could say. Hmm. Ah, well, but yeah, not really a huge amount of personality for this guy because of the fact that he's not a real person. It's the stereotypical killing machine thing where the personality of the killing machine is devoted to the fact that it's a killing machine and thus not really all that interesting as a person. Trying to fit the movie into the anime plot though. Because Goku uses the spirit bomb while fighting Android 13, and it's Goku that actually kills him. If I remember, we actually have future Trunks and Vegeta in this one, which is like, because there's no way you could wedge this in during the Android saga or the Cell saga. That just doesn't work. And having it before the Android saga also doesn't make sense. Ah, whatever. Like I said earlier, if you worry about it too much, too many headaches. Hmm. This is an interesting plot thing. This is one of those that kind of actually has a tie to the anime that people found to be more strange than understandable. Because one thing that was never explained in the original Future of Trunks thing is, where does Trunks get that sword from? The best guess people have come up with is that it was something that Bulma made, but no one taught Trunks how to use the sword. So it's kind of head scratching. But one of the things that comes up in the movie with these guys is that Minosha's sword is given to Kid Trunks, which, eh? But and of course, Bardock, the father of Goku, was designed by Akira Toriyama, as well as Bardock's personal. Um, let's go with crew. Yeah, crew is close enough. Like four Saiyan warriors who are, by Saiyan standards, above average, and not, uh, you know, regular run of the mill Saiyans. So all of them would be probably stronger than Raditz. However, given the way that the whole timeline thing works, Fascia is old enough to be Goku's mother, which means that she would be old enough to be Gohan's grandmother, and so on and so forth. Ah, well. This is getting long. I know it's actually watching. Yeah, well, I guess I'll wrap this up. He wrote quite a lot of interesting stuff over the years. Some of which is very so you know, I'm not sure that calling it salacious is really the right word for it, because he does sexy characters, but not like a lot. They exist, but they're not something you see regularly. But he's actually done that since the original Dragon Ball. Oh well, it's like Android 21 and Toa were definitely designed to look sexy as a basic part of the character concept. Same with Android 21. But Toriyama isn't really into the whole like drawing skimpy clothes on women thing. So he does sexy women in relatively tight fitting outfits, but not overly revealing ones. Hmm. This is an odd one because of the sheer number of stars that this planet is associated with. Oh yeah, this thing. This is a weird looking spaceship because if you actually pay close attention to it, this meshes the technology that the Namekians put into their spaceships with the technology from the capsule style spaceships used by Frieza's forces. And this was designed and built by Bulma using the technology that she had managed to scavenge from those various sources over the years. So, yeah, that's a fun one. And yeah, Toriyama seems to have intentionally designed it to play off of that idea. Kind of interesting, honestly. Like the overall shape is actually very much like the one that Piccolo had. Not exactly the same, mind you, but vaguely similar. But the like details of how it's put together, very much like the stuff Frieza uses. Ooh. Hmm. To redirect to a character in a list. It is a big guy though. Not a particularly bad guy, just a big guy. Oh well. Anyway, I guess I'll wrap it up here. I was just wanted to do a stream talking about how much I like the work that Toriyama put together, and yeah, so much of this stuff that I could talk about, and I could keep going for several more hours, and I would probably end up falling asleep if I tried going over all of it. That's actually an interesting question. Who actually did design the Gain character? Hmm. Gain is kind of important because of the fact that she's Goku's mother, although she's someone who kind of sort of got stuck in as a secondary character as in flashbacks. Although several of the Dragon Ball games, due to wanting to put in more characters to pad the roster or something, fighting games put in a whole bunch of people that are barely exist in the anime. Hmm. Hmm. Okay, so Akira Toriyama uh, mentioned the character in an interview in 2014, and her design was first shown in Dragon Ball Minus, a short story that was part of a Jacko the Galactic Patrolman manga. Okay. Hmm. Well. Hey. Huh. That's really cool. Honestly, this is one of those things that where um there's a whole lot of stuff that you could go into with this because, like I mentioned before, it's like the sheer volume of stuff that's been put out for Dragon Ball over the years alone, even if you don't do the Dragon Quest stuff, because like Toriyama didn't write Dragon Quest, he just drew characters for it. Toriyama's writing in Dragon Ball was quirky and interesting. Hmm. Do, 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 do. Yeah. Theoretically, she had the ability to take on a great ape transformation. Um, was she able to actually like control herself in that form? I don't know. Could she maybe possibly theoretically have become a Super Saiyan at some point? Yeah, maybe. Gain and Toa fusing Gain with Toa, really? That feels like it would be a downgrade. Like it would actually make Toa weaker. Hmm. Yeah, because Toa's some weird demon thing. But Toa's actually extremely strong. Although she's kind of sort of a magic user kind of character. Mm, hmm. Like Toe is a very interesting character because of the fact that she's introduced in Xenoverse and Dragon Ball Online as one of the big bads because she's Dabura's sister. Note how she has a completely different skin color. This goes back to what I was saying earlier about some of the alien races in Dragon Ball and demon races too, for that matter. They're not human, therefore their skin colors don't follow the same logic that you see in humans. And of course, she gets to wear a white lab coat because evil scientist person, even though she's a demon. Whatever. Oh, also, she gets her own version of a Super Saiyan transformation eventually because why not? Ah, well. Yeah, the whole demon goddess thing. Definitely an interesting character to handle it. And I think I'm done now. So many things I could keep going on about, and I'm getting tired. Well. Well, I guess I'll see you guys later. Toriyama did some of the most influential work ever, and the work he did in Dragon Ball got copied by a lot of people. Like it's been explicitly stated by several different manga and anime writers that the reason they did what they did was because they saw what Toriyama had done and were like, "Huh, I could do something like that. Maybe people will like it if I do something kind of similar to that." Which is how we got One Piece and Naruto and Yu Yu Hakusho. Although that was considerably older, but hey, you know. Yu Yu Hakusho was seemingly inspired more by the original Dragon Ball than Dragon Ball Z, but hey. It's like there is actually like an official crossover between Dragon Ball and One Piece, which honestly was kind of an amusing idea. Let's see if it's in here somewhere. Maybe not. Oh well. Or maybe I accidentally scrolled past it. Let's double check. Hmm. I do recall having seen a copy of it when I was looking at stuff earlier, but I don't remember where. Oh yeah, one of the other things is that some of the things that Toriyama did as non-Dragon Ball mangas are actually set in the same universe as Dragon Ball, and Toriyama will kind of sort of have the two cross over. Like Jacko, the Galactic Patrolman, shows up in Dragon Ball Super. He didn't show up in Dragon Ball Z, but he shows up in Dragon Ball Super because that's what Toriyama felt like writing. Oh, and Chobit. That is one of those things where I was like, huh, this is interesting. And I never actually went very far with it, though, because, it actually only had like 2 volumes or issues or whatever. Yeah, well, alrighty then. I'm out. See you guys later.